Welcome to the Slade Ham Experiment. It's another conversation with a good friend of mine on this show, the host of the Rock the Cashbar podcast, the podcast that takes deep dives into the music you love and the song lyrics that you think you know the meanings behind. We have a great conversation. We talk about the old days. We talk about how to balance an artistic life with your already chaotic regular one. I imagine this is probably helpful for most of you who are trying to do just that, balance a regular job with time for the things you love to do. And of course, it's all the usual irreverence from the show. We talk about Prince and The Secret and writing exercises and Rage Against the Machine. It's fun. Please join me with my guest, Dianne Gallagher.
We started like right in March of the pandemic, 2020. I just had this idea, and it started from a misheard song lyric. And what I fucked up doing is like talked about that so much that everybody thinks my podcast is about misheard song lyrics. It is not. It is a segment we did for a short amount of time. So what it is, it's my co-host Ben Mowbray and I. Each week we pick one song and we break down the lyrics line by line, and we talk about just, you know, what the song, what we thought it meant, what the band says it meant, what the general public thought it meant, or any personal connection we have to the song. Misheard song lyrics come up while we're talking about like this. I thought they were saying this. It all started. I was in my room and I was reading Instagram, and a friend of mine had just found out in 2020 that 9 Inch Nails' "Terrible Lie" isn't, I can't remember what she thought he was saying, and it was super funny. Terrible light. Turn out the light. That's what she thought. And she's like, you know, in her 40s, and she's like, I just found out today he's saying terrible lie.
That's got to be, for so many people, I think of the obvious ones, one wrapped up like a douche.
Yeah,
or
exactly.
Or the ones that, you know, people have heard 1,000 times, and you just sing them incorrectly your whole life.
It's great.
I realize there's probably songs that I'm not even singing lyrics to. I'm making noises along with, and have never. Now, granted, most of that's the Chili Peppers discography.
Yes.
But
Nobody knows what Anthony is saying. Including Anthony.
Danga dong dong.
We did a couple of episodes. Dale Cheeseman, huge Chili Peppers fan. We're never gonna stay focused, but I'm gonna tell you, he's young, and I'm like, okay, I can be a Chili Peppers person, but he does not know Blood Sugar Sex Magic Chili Peppers.
Excuse me. Hold please.
He doesn't know it.
Hold please. I'm having a minor heart attack.
He's a mega fan starting in the 2000s Chili Pepper.
No, you start, so you got to go all the way back to Uplift Mofo Party Plan. You got to, like, I'm talking funk 80s Chili Peppers.
Even Higher Ground cover.
Higher Ground, which was a Stevie Wonder cover.
Yes.
And then you get into, before you ever get to Blood Sugar Sex Magic, you have Johnny Kick a Hole in the Sky. Like, you have so much Chili Peppers before you get to the Chili Peppers.
He knows this Anthony Kiedis. I'm like, that's not.
No, Hair in the Eye, Anthony. No, Blood Sugar Sex Magic remains, and we will be all over the road this episode, in the probably top 10 albums that have ever existed to me. It's so perfect in that the storytelling, Apache Rose Peacock, the actual Blood Sugar Sex Magic. I mean, we pick a track and let's go. Funky Monks, let's
Suck My Kiss.
Yeah.
So good. He doesn't know it.
Breaking the Girl, but he knows Give It Away now. He knows Under the Bridge.
Well,
He knows,
I mean, I think you inserted that at birth. When you pass through the canal,
Right.
you're told, like, give it away. Like, it's just in your psyche.
or Under the Bridge, depending on how well off your parents are.
Yeah. Yeah. And it just, like, when I was, he wanted to do a Chili Peppers episode because we have a guest like once a month now, and we let our guests choose the song. And when he's like a mega fan, I was like ready to get into it. And when he's like, oh, I don't even know that.
So what did you discuss? Did Californication and their early work?
What's so funny is he was so high that he had told me the wrong song. So once we started recording, we recorded a whole song. He's like, this isn't even the song I wanted to talk about. I can't remember what we did.
Dale, though, as podcast guests go, was a frequent repeat offender on Doug Loves Movies. So he is very used to doing podcasts stoned.
He is I'm going to maybe say the funniest guest we've had on the podcast. I mean, it was hilarious.
He did the Whiskey Brothers with us for a couple of years, and so many episodes of just being floored by his take on things. He's a very funny
just
thinker.
Conversationally funny. Him and Sarah Talamash are the two just conversationally funniest people on this planet.
Another one of my of all the Houston comics of this era, and we'll revisit that era, the early Laff Stop days or the late Laff Stop days, depending on when you came to the Laff Stop as a watcher. But the late '90s, the early 2000s. Sarah Talamash, a fantastic comic. Her special, Voluptuous Boy, is I watch her because there are comics I enjoy watching that aren't my style of writing. Right? Like I don't write one-liners, or I don't think in the way she thinks.
Nobody does.
You can't.
Nobody does.
So it's like a guilty pleasure to turn it on and just watch without participating. My brain is never going where hers is, and that's very refreshing.
And nobody can deliver her. I mean, I could retell something she told, and it's not as funny. You have to have her timing. It has to happen. And awkwardness. But it's not even always awkward. She's sneakily confident in what she's doing. But I have two really funny stories. So anyway, I have a podcast. Whatever. Go listen to it. It's called Rock the Cashbar.
We'll come back to it a little bit.
We'll come back to it. Two of the funniest things I can say about Sarah have nothing to do with anything she's ever said on stage. The first one was we were hanging out in New York with my husband's cousin. We're all friends up there. And Sarah, and we had gone to the beach. And on the way home from the beach to Long Island, in Long Island, it came on the radio that Michael Jackson had died.
Oh.
And so we were like, holy shit. And so we go to this really, really popular, crowded bar that another one of Corbin's cousins bartends at, and we're packed up against the bar, and I am sitting like back to back with this Long Island chick, and we're over the Michael Jackson thing. We got over it pretty quick.
About 2 p.m.
Yeah, and she doesn't drink anymore, I don't think, at this stage, but I'm getting drunk at the bar, and we start talking about nude beaches, and would we go, and what would it be like? And I don't remember exactly what she said or how she said it, but she was saying, I would just want to go and keep my top on and lose my bottoms. And if anyone asks, she's like, I'm just here to air out my pussy. And I was laughing so hard that my body was shaking. And I noticed that the woman behind me, her body was shaking. And I was laughing at Sarah's pussy, and she was crying because Michael Jackson had just died.
the most unrelated sobbing synchronized. You guys actually connected on the other side of the circle.
Where I wanted to be like tapping her, but listen to what she said.
It'll fix you.
It'll feel better. And then this isn't even my story to tell. I wasn't there. Paul Odo has a story about they were at Mike McRae's wedding years ago, and they were in a car, and I think it was the funniest group of people in one car. It could have been Henry Phillips, Greg Warren, Paul Odo, and Sarah Talamash.
Oh God!
And they almost died in a car accident. This car was running a red light and almost T-boned them. And right when it sped up, it would have hit Sarah in the back seat. And Paul said, I don't know why. He's like, I don't know why she said it, but she just went, hot dogs. And to this day, I've not asked her why she said hot dogs. And Paul's like, that is proof that she was just funny to her bones.
Oh my God, that is not even the words. It's just make a sound in the right place. I could hear that coming out of her mouth.
Which makes me think all this stuff that we talk about when we die, like seeing lights and all that stuff. I was like, no, your brain just malfunctions. It's all bullshit. Hot dogs.
Does it just short out, and that's where your brain goes?
Yes.
It just starts throwing everything you've ever experienced all at once?
Yeah. So, yeah, she was the first. Actually, after Carly Baker, Sarah became the first hardcore female friend I had back in the old Laff Stop days.
So I remember there being more. There probably remember more female comics than I can name now, but I remember feeling like there were a lot in the early 2000s.
There was. I mean, it was me, Sarah, Kristen, and even the ones who were kind of slipping out, like Melissa Nichols and Hollis and Kelly, and Kelly was already gone by then. There were so many of us, and then I don't know what it's like now, the new generation. I don't know if the girls are close. I feel like I've seen more girls coming up, but
there's a lot.
We were close back then, and we really supported each other. And we were also close with the male comics' girlfriends and wives. Like we went to all each other's weddings and baby showers and stuff. Like we were a nice little clan.
It was almost, and I came into this, I won't say as an outsider, but I was coming from Beaumont. So
you were a Beaumont guy.
I was, right, of course. I was not a Houston comic, and it was frequently reminded of it.
Scram, Beaumont guy.
Yeah, that's how I felt.
Also book me at your club.
Yeah, I know. Once I got the club, everything changed. But the whole time, I'm just like, I will outlast every one of you.
And you have.
But it's stubbornness, not talent.
Same.
I remember it having a high school or college feel to it.
College.
And that very much that there were sororities and fraternities and people were learning. It's hard to explain now. As I talk because I frequent the comedy scenes now, and I see that there are a lot of people doing things, but with no guidance whatsoever.
Well, their friends are all booking each other on each other's shows. They didn't have a booker who didn't know the fuck you were that you had to prove yourself to get on a show.
So how explain that part of, because it seems like a myth when you tell people that that's how things used to be. But
we used to have to prove ourselves. God damn it!
When you came into the Laff Stop, young female comic, you'd never done this before. What was the process from the first time you walked in as an open micer to actually
getting paid?
To getting paid as a comic? What was just that process?
Okay, so yeah, you start at the infamous Monday night Laff Stop open mic, and you had 5 minutes, and you didn't go over your time, even though they let me on the first one, because my first one was good, and then it was never that good again.
Nailed it.
Luck. That was just dirty, and they're like, cute girls talking dirty, let her keep going. But so you do it, and you do it religiously. You go every Monday night, and you go up every Monday night, and that was another thing. And there were some comics there that just worked the same bits over and over and over, but it kind of got to where it's like, if you're really trying, like you were looked down upon if you weren't writing new stuff each week, and you were trying. And so back when I was there, Babbitt was gone. He wasn't gone long, but he was gone, but still kind of around, like hovering around.
And
like
Mark Babbitt was the booker and the manager of the Laff Stop through this whole era.
When it was the biggest. Like he was with Mitch Hedberg and...
Mitch Hedberg. You think about all the people we talk about who've recorded albums probably in that era from the late 90s and early 2000s, but Dane Cook, Doug Stanhope, Louis Black, the list is just Rogan. The list is endless of people who chose. That was just the best room in the country for context. And Mark was the driving force behind it.
And he was a lover of comedy, and he really, really invested in the comics. By the time I got there, it was Pete.
It was the new manager.
New manager Pete could give a fuck all about and so. It was really hard to get stage time, like the paid or a guest spot. So once you're doing open mic enough and you think you're good enough to get a guest spot, you were just trying for that first guest spot.
And a guest spot is just a free, unpaid opportunity to go up in front of the hot crowd on a weekend.
Yes. And my first guest spot story is funny because I had been doing it long enough, and I guess word of mouth. I think word of mouth gets around, like, hey, she's actually good. Right. Like, hey, this person's actually good. You should give her a shot. Like, people will tell people who the manager has already trusted and is working is like, hey, she can do it. And that's how it happens. You had to impress the back room, and not just the back room. Like, there were some duds that we loved that should never get paid. But, enough to be like, hey, she can do this. And so I guess someone had finally told that to Pete, and we were sitting there. Nick DiPaolo was in town. I'm going to blast him. And he was sitting at the back bar where we did open mic back then, which is, anyway, the front bar, back bar. And Pete just goes, Dianne, do you want to do a guest spot? And I was like, no, yes, finally, for Nick DiPaolo. And I was like, that's fucking huge. And Nick DiPaolo was sitting right there, knew the whole thing was happening, saw my eyes light up, even though I tried to play it kind of cool. And so I told my whole family, and they all came on Friday.
Oh, wow.
And Pete walks up to me. He's like, Nick said no guest spots tonight. He just doesn't, he's not in the mood.
What?
I was like, all right, it's cool. And I stayed. I watched his whole set. We were sitting, that little side hallway that all the comics would hang out in. And, that's where the headliner has to go up and down to get on the stage. And, he had a great set, and he comes down that hallway, and I'm just looking at him, and I'm clapping, and he was like, oh, that was shit. And he's grumpy. And Anyway, and I'm realizing that end of this story, I get to say who I finally got to open for next week, or do a guess what for, and his name is leaving my mind.
Was it somebody famous?
Yeah, well, in comedy.
Yeah.
For some reason, Jimmy Schubert.
Shooby Dooby Doo! Jimmy Schubert, what a pleasure.
Yeah.
One of the most fun people to ever. Me and Jimmy Schubert got a cab driver drunk and had him drive us around Tampa. We did this a week together, and I just remember getting in the car.
Defeats the whole purpose of taking a cab.
Why we took the cab was because me and Jimmy were lit, and this was at the old Side Splitters, and the asshole who used to run the place. Anyway, he was getting Bobby Jewell was getting us all drunk, and me and Jimmy were trying to get away from him. So we call a cab, and we have the cab driver. And Jimmy's in the front seat, and he's trying to convince the cab driver that he's famous. But the cab driver is like kind of from India or something. So he's foreign, and he's Jakarta. I have no idea. But he's like, okay. And Jimmy's like, no. And he's pulling up pictures of himself. So he pulls up this scene from, I don't know, Mr. and Mrs. Smith or something, and shows it to the cab driver. And the guy's like, it's a Jimmy Schubert, everybody. It's a Jimmy Schubert. So Jimmy goes, hey, we want to pull off and get some shots before we go back to where we're going. And we stop, and Jimmy talks the guy into coming in with us and having a drink, and I buy a round of shots for everybody. And
another round for my cabbie.
It's a Jimmy Schubert.
It's great. That's awesome.
But that sensation of, I remember it was Thea Vidal was the first person I got to work with, and it was in Beaumont. And that sensation of knowing that the transition from here's what I know, which is open mic, right? Here is this thing, and even the Laff Stop was a powerful open mic, which we'll double click and talk about. But the transition from that to the main room in at the Laff Stop was just as huge, right? That transition from open mic to main showroom comes with an emotion of just I did something.
I'm not full of shit.
Yeah.
I'm not just like. And maybe, just because you finally get the chance to open for somebody doesn't mean you're great yet.
No.
And you still can eat some shit up there.
But you're further along than you were when you were the guy. You mentioned some of the names, not names, but the people that would come, the archetypes that showed up on Mondays. So you got to picture an open mic that is this isn't 2 hours of comedy. This is sign up at 6 o'clock, 6:30 in the evening. The show starts at 7. You put your name in the bucket. There's a draw. They make the lineup, and some people didn't go up because time ran out.
At 2 in the morning.
Because I was there until 2 in the morning from Beaumont and sitting in the back going, well, I go up at 1:15. I had to get here at 6 to put my name in the bucket. There was a bar across the street that Jody Fertig, another great comic, used to bartend at, the old Sherlock's. And we'd go over there and kill time and come back. But it was this evening of all sorts of things.
Well, it was the camaraderie. So, okay, the structure of like kind of the audience sat in the front room right when you walked in the door. That was the open mic stage, and that's where the audience was, and like the newer comics. And
it's like a bar in a lobby area.
Yeah, exactly. And then you go in the back, which was actually the big showroom on the weekends, but that's where the comics who had been there a while and got paid to do comedy.
The old guard,
sat in the back, smoked cigarettes, played poker, writing in the notebooks, shooting the shit. It was nonstop comedy talk, and like that's where the college part of it comes in. This is where like you learned your community of being funny, and this is where you found your people. This is where you're like, I have been looking for you my whole life. All these dipshits I went to high school with, I knew they were wrong for me. Here you are, my people.
So what did you like? What do you learn in a back room like that about comedy?
Oh, God. What's not funny, I think, is like if you're writing down an idea and you're talking and they're like,
kind of a group vetting process of I'm thinking about this or I'm thinking about that. How does the tag process with that many, when you have that many good comics, right? And I know what it's like in a mic now. You come off stage, and if you're lucky, one of your buddies, it's like, man, you should try this line.
I only had Kristen Linder doing it.
Nobody else was.
Always, though. Like, she would just pop out of nowhere with that notebook, like, I have like 3 tags for you on this one.
But
and they were good.
Because as a writing exercise, writing for other people is actually very, very, very helpful.
Yeah.
It's sitting in the back and finding a way to punch up things that aren't yours, right? This is never a premise I would have come up with, so the exercise is like twice as hard. I know how to write for me.
Right.
How do I write for this?
What I always wanted to do, but I didn't want to step on anybody's toes because I'm a good editor, And I would look at Paul sometimes with his long stories and be like, I can make that joke 30 seconds. I know where all your hard laughs are, and I know how to make it tight if you just let me.
That's because your brain understands the game. You
Yeah.
get set up, punch, timing in
Yeah.
ways that, and I think we can all do this, where we can look at someone else's act and go, oh my God, this is exactly how I'd do it. And then we look at our own acts and we're like, I have no idea. how
No
to fix
fucking
this."
clue.
So the Laff Stop happens. You're a comic for an extended period of time, and you stop.
I did. Well, so I stopped and started a whole bunch because I got sucked into improv.
You laugh because you know I'm anti-improv.
Everybody is. Are you kidding me? I'm anti-improv.
I've softened a little in that I only I understand what improv is and recognize its importance as a tool to the art of comedy in general. What I despise is organized, sanctioned improv.
Yes.
It's the attempt to make it formal. It's I'm so impressed and in love with it when I watch it happen organically.
When the good people do it, but that's the problem is that there's a learning process to become good, and it's brutal to watch.
So why is it publicized? Why is the learning process up in front of people?
Because that's the only way that you're going to get good is to do it in front of an audience.
Is it with improv?
Yeah, because what I did is we just keep talking about Paul. Paul, get out of here. He's the one that went to New York and did like the first rounds and then came back and opened up a group for us. And it was mostly comics. And that's the reason why I felt like ours was different and special. We weren't a bunch of thespians doing it. We were stand-up comedians doing it. And usually they're at war with each other.
Right. So the yes and in stand-up comedy, we don't have to ever do it. We don't have to take into it. I don't care what you think. I don't care what your input is. I'm doing stand-up.
Right.
But that's interesting to look at it from a standpoint of people who organically understand comedic timing in a way that I think that probably does work more than taking actors who don't understand comedy and trying to get them to synthesize comedy.
Right.
It's
knowing
nuanced.
when the punchline hit, because like when you do these scenes and then I mean these scenes are just going and you don't know where they're going to go, and when that funny moment hits you wipe the scene and everybody knows it's clear. Stand-up comics know when that punchline hits better than an actor, I think.
That's
all the time.
very true.
Yeah.
What's important when you're working with other stand-up comics and improv? What do you have to? What changes in the forefront of your brain?
We had such a good group, and learning the rules and having a group that's like, okay, we're not trying to stand out and be the funny one. The whole point of it is a working together flow. And like you're throwing a ball at your friend to catch, and hopefully they say the funny thing, and they're doing it back and forth. You're not trying to be the hero of this,
right?
And you're really trying to lift up the other person. And
how do you navigate that conversation with other comics, though? Was everybody just on board, like, hey, we get it?
I think so. In our group, I think they did. Every now and then there would be someone that like wasn't a comic, like that like one of Paul's friends wanted to play, but he was a very, very, very funny person. But sometimes he would just go for that. I'm like, stop, you're just trying to do the joke you had in your head and you're not listening to what we're doing here, you know?
I think stand-up comics, I've never done formal improv, right? I think there might have been, we had an improv troupe at my club for a year.
Was it short form or long form?
Short form. And they weren't even, it's very just confusing to me. My brain doesn't
I don't
work
find it funny
that way. No?
No, I don't find whose line is it anyway. I don't find any of that real funny.
How prepared is that all improv, or how much are you walking into?
I think it's a mix of like a little bit of planning, a little bit. We're going to do that. And then, I mean, those guys are good. On that show, those guys were great. Like, give me a break. But the groups at our age, our level that were doing short form, I found just hacky and horrible. I just never found it to be funny. It's
like the default setting is to go, when you say hacky, just to go to the simple, that's what she said type of punchline, the very first. And I guess that's why I do enjoy, I think stand-up always gets me more, is because I'm like, I have time to sit down and refine this.
Yes.
It's magic to watch stuff happen out of thin air, but finished product doesn't happen out of thin air for me.
Well, so the whole purpose of improv, I mean, isn't going to an improv show, and these people that are in these sketch groups, you do the improv and then something really funny, like a whole three-tiered scene comes out of it, and then you take that and you write it down and you make a sitcom. it's the whole point of it is an exercise to learn, like
to shake ideas loose and to see how they layer into that I understand. If you told me that we were going to do improv to attempt to refine some raw material for something later, then I'm 100% in. That comes right back to what this podcast, my solo side of it, has been anyway. This isn't meant to be great. It's meant to be like the source material for something great. And which brings me to my next thing, which is you're now starting to do, aside from the podcast, you're finding outlets for art, right?
Yes.
The breaks have been taken.
I had a kid. That was the big break.
You're still a mother. You still have this life to live. And I think this probably overlaps with almost everybody listening, which is I have this real life, this thing I exist in, these responsibilities and this stuff that you just can't get out of because I said yes to them. It's life. But I also have this artistic stuff that has been clawing it. It's the same thing that dragged you to the comedy club. It's the same thing that forces you to do all these other things. That claws and digs and has to get out.
Catherine O'Hara in Beetlejuice, where she's like, if you do not let me gut out this house and make it my own, I will go insane and I will take you with me. That is me if I don't have an outlet. I love my child. He's so smart. I cannot just be his mom. I cannot, and I don't work anymore. I don't have a day job anymore. I clean my house for a living, and like I can't. And I asked for it. This is a deal I made with my husband financially, and that's another whole long story. But and he said yes to it, and I gave him a really good reason why I should be doing this, and then he knocked me up. Within 3 months of me quitting my job, he put a baby in me.
I love your husband. He's so great.
So, but I mean, you know, I didn't want kids. I mean, I agreed to it, and I love my child. But like, my whole vision in life is I've always been in entertainment in some way, and I'm creative. I paint. I do art. I was a graphic designer for a living when I did work. And I'm like, I have to be expressing myself in some way. And I was getting like really depressed. And I had a nervous breakdown in 2016. It was kind of ugly. And I finally started doing therapy. And my therapist just kept hounding of like, what are you doing for you? Like, what are you doing for you? And I was always like, I couldn't answer it ever.
I make breakfast for me too sometimes.
Sometimes I go on a walk and cry. So that day where I read that text and that girl had like a misheard song lyric, and then I was just like, I love music. I'm really obsessed with music, and I have no talent. I don't play an instrument. I don't sing, but I've always been obsessed with music. And I was like, it just like came from the clouds. And I was like, I want to do a podcast where we talk about song lyrics. And I text Ben immediately because I was like, who? And I thought about my friend Michelle, who's in a band, and she lives in Austin, but she's too busy. And I was like, someone here, someone who also quit comedy and maybe needs an outlet. I was like, Ben. And also he can be very pretentious and talk about lyrics, and he's a poet, and he reads, and he immediately was like, that I want to do that so bad. And I was like, let's start.
Ben Mowbray, winner of Houston's Funniest Person. Did he win?
He won in 99?
99. I can't ever remember who won and who came in second. It's always...
Or 2000. Is he 2000?
So anyway, somewhere in there. Former winner and
yes.
Your co-host on the show. How'd you go about carving out time for this, or making space in motherhood and your home life?
He goes to school for hours.
Okay,
and that's when we record it.
But that's not that. You still gotta have the motivation to do that. Like because you're putting out consistent episodes. You have promo. You have a social media presence. It's not like you're just recording something on a phone and throwing it out there.
No, I'm very neurotic and I'm very organized. Like when I did work, I did well. I got paid well, and I was a good employee, and I'm very organized, and I meet my deadlines, and I get shit done. So I brought that into the creativity, where like it was my idea. I do all the graphic design work. I edit it. I do everything.
Mm-hmm. I know some things about that. This is a lot of work.
And that doesn't, like, I could not do it without Ben. So I don't want it to sound like I run this show. If he decided he didn't want to do it anymore, it'd be over. Because, he's such an important piece to it. But, yeah, I have a neuroticism about, like, all right, when I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it the best of my ability.
How do you get someone who's not neurotic to have that kind of... How would you teach that work ethic? If you were explaining to someone who wanted to launch a podcast right now, And you're a perfect example because you did it out of nothing, out of a vacuum, not some, hey, I'm in the middle of my, million following stand-up comedy career. It's just out of nothing. You said, I'm going to do this. And now you have a regular, very good podcast that is out and consistent and there for the world.
Good guess. People like us and agree to do it.
But how do you build that sort of want to out of nothing? How would you do it?
Boredom. No, if you're asking me, like what drives me, nothing else going on in my life. I don't think I can teach someone else who doesn't have the drive. You can't teach drive. You can't teach consistency to someone who doesn't have that type of personality.
Well, I don't know. To me, it's because you have to figure out where that personality came from, right? I have an but I think it's based on the fact that I've slowly tricked myself into doing a couple of things decently. Right? Like there was a point where I was not motivated at all.
Were you a good student?
No.
Okay.
But that was based on boredom. I was absolutely jaw-droppingly bored through high school.
Okay.
My senior year, my English teacher, I had a 9. That was my grade at like the first or second 6 weeks. And it was because I wouldn't read anything that was on. We were having to read these books, and it was all shit I had read like 2 or 3 or whatever years before. I'm like, I didn't like it then, and I read it like self-driven because I was just reading everything, and I'm not gonna reread it so I can pass some test. I'm just not. And we went back and forth, and she was like, well, if we come to grips with a list of books that we both agree on, will you just do those instead? And I spent most of my senior year doing like off-book curriculum just because she was like, I can't fail you, but also I can't let you do nothing.
I am so surprised you had a teacher like that during the time that we grew up. Just fucking do the work.
Her name was Miss Ernie, and it was very evident that it was just a mismatch. I was just not going to follow that. I was a very rebellious kid in high school, and I just wasn't gonna. I was like, fail me.
You didn't have parents that would beat you if you didn't make a B.
I had
like I did.
No. So weirdly enough, my parents divorced when I was 8.5, right? So between 3rd and 4th grade, my mom moved us to Beaumont from Orange, Texas.
Big leap.
Huge leap. It was the city. We had a mall in Beaumont. We didn't have to drive to the city to go to the mall. Right. We just had one. So she was teaching 2nd and 3rd grade elementary school. That was her job. She's raising 4 boys as a single parent from the ages of 1 to 9.
What a nightmare.
Oh God.
This is giving me anxiety.
To this day, I think about it. I'm like, I've said it before. I couldn't sustain me.
It makes me want to cry a little bit. I have one.
Every day. And I think about, so when I came home with grades or what, it was just, are you dead? Did you pass? Are we... you're not going back to same grade next year? Then
I'm an only child that they could torture.
No, I didn't.
All the focus was, and I was a product of teenage pregnancy. My mom had to drop out her sophomore year in high school because of me. So it was like, you will not fucking fail. You will not have our life.
You did not ruin my life. Ruin yours also.
And I think my mom was like, this will not happen to you. You will make the good grades, and there is no giving you prizes for making A's. You get in trouble if you don't. And but also a mixture of, I liked school. I liked learning. I liked impressing people with how fucking smart I was.
Fair.
I graduated high in high school. I graduated magna cum laude in college. And nobody was asking me to be that good in college.
I also graduated high from high school.
I like my word choice there. High ranking. I didn't fuck with the drugs then, not too much. A little bit later, but not too much. I just out of fear of my parents finding out. But it just became in my, this is how I function. I remember getting my first, I made 120 on a final exam in government in college, and I showed it to my mom, and she was so unimpressed. She was like, you better, you're paying for it.
How much of that translates down to your son now? Are you that kind of parent?
I don't have to be. He's so fucking smart right now. He's in gifted and talented classes in 3rd grade, and he likes learning.
What if he's bored by 5th or 6th and he starts bringing home C's and D's?
Scared.
What are you going to do?
My parents are going to come out. I'm going to be like, you're too smart to be dumb. I'm not going to let you be dumb. I'm not going to allow it.
It's such a, and I think through hypotheticals all the time, right? No children, no risk of children. That's not in the future, but I do think about my nieces and everything else, and you try to translate that because I only have points of reference from when I was in school.
Yeah.
And now it's this entirely different, like the way you research something is so different. Like I had to go to the library and talk to an old woman who would point me back to a section, and then I would have to pour through some box of cards to figure out.
Microfiche.
Yes, and scrolling through the process of doing that versus now just typing it into some AI program.
They don't let you. They don't let you. My son's in his GT class has to do a big project, and they're very, very strict on what you can use for research.
Really?
Yeah, he's doing his on filmmaking, and so he's gonna interview his uncle, who is a filmmaker, and then he's there. You can have a book, and then they have websites that you are allowed to use for research that they have allowed, but like just Google, not allowed.
But what an interesting conundrum. Like, I mean, some of that is where the information lies.
I know.
That's where
But these are third graders. They have to clamp down a little bit more.
Yeah, but that's the skills they're going to bring with them for the rest of their lives, is these clamp down tendencies.
Well, I mean, you just can't let a third grader loose on Google. He's going to find out about fisting. I mean, there has to be parameters.
I guess so. Yeah, that's the danger of access to everything.
Yeah. I mean, they're going to get it soon enough.
I don't know if third grade is the right place to introduce them to all that. You got to.
I have stories about this with my neighbors. I want to do a little detour super
Please.
quick. But like having the sex talk with them because of the world now, like they're learning about everything so fast. And, he's already asking me details about where babies come from. And I'm like, I'm not going to tell you about sex now.
Right.
And he's on the autism spectrum. And it's just all facts. And I don't even think he can compute this stuff. And I was talking to my neighbor about it, and her daughter's in 4th grade, and she was like, we already had to have the talk because boys on the bus were telling her to go Google it. And she's like, I'm trying to get out in front of that and be like, let me just go ahead and tell you what it is.
How do they process that?
So listen, I asked her, I was like, was she horrified? And she goes, no, she was like super into it. And this is the funniest thing I've ever heard. After she processed it all, she looked at her mom. She's one of 3, and she's the oldest of 3. And she goes, I cannot believe you and Dad had to do that 3 times. Is that the best? And I was like, oh, the things we do for love. Keep that in your head, kid, for a long time, that it's awful and gross.
Just taking a quick break to remind you that if you wanted to, you could pop on over to sladeham.com and get a free copy of my book digitally. You get it when you sign up for the newsletter, which is pretty cool. It comes out twice a month and gives you tips and tricks and all sorts of things that might help you if you're struggling as an artist or just as a human. It's free. It happens at sladeham.com. You can sign up right now. Now, back to the show.
You have a graphic design background before.
That's what I went to college for.
Before any of this, and you're on social media, so you see the terrible attempts at promotion that most artists throw out there, musicians and comedians both. What guidelines, if someone, what do people, give me like the 3
simple
tips
things
that someone designing a flyer for themselves could use?
No more than 2 different typefaces. In
Fonts?
Graphic design, we call them typefaces, not fonts.
Okay.
Fonts are like, so you have Helvetica as the typeface, and then you have like Helvetica Light, Helvetica Narrow, Helvetica Bold. Those are fonts.
What?
People don't know that.
No, I didn't know that.
If you want to know that.
Now I know that.
Typefaces.
I'll stop calling them fonts.
You can. Everybody calls them fonts.
Nope. Typeface. From here on out, I'll make people explain myself.
If you're doing a poster, I mean, okay, make the venue. You are important, but you're not always the most important thing. Like, you got to see the venue. No more than 2 different typefaces. Have a heading in a certain typeface and then all the information in another one. When you're slapping up like fucking papyrus and everything you can on there, stop it.
Papyrus, Bleeding Cowboys.
It is a mess. Stop blending everything in together with like the background fuzz thing. Like, that's just, it's so tacky. It starts looking like a used car lot. Like, sign.
Are people just excited to use tools that they find in these programs? Is that
They don't have a background in design. They don't understand composition. Like, where is your eye going? Like, when we were doing like basic posters in college, it's like, where does your eye go first, and where is it moving around the space?
It's like a comic book panel, right? Like, or a page where the story, even though there's no story, there's a bit of a narrative on a poster.
And there's a order of operations, like what's the most important thing, and then like where, what time, what, you know, and then like what gets bold and what gets a little bit smaller and this, and then the names of the people. But like there are these like flyers that come out and my brain is just gone into the matrix where I'm like, I don't even know where to look. It's insane.
16 sponsor names and 15 comic heads, and the names of them are all over the place.
Which nobody cares about most of this information.
What and where? That's it.
What time?
What, where, when?
Yes, and one like thing that ties it all together, like one funny image. Like you asked me to do one for the Whiskey Brothers once, and I was like, I don't even want to put y'all's pictures on this.
Yeah,
everybody knows who you are. And then I was looking around, and someone had gifted us this holder of shot glasses, of like 9 shot glasses. And I was like, what if I just take a photo of this and make that like crystal clear, like the whole background? And then I eventually had to add your faces, but I did get away with it.
But the actual design was so clean, and I looked when I first saw it, I was like, this is brilliant. It says everything we are without literally writing the words and copy pasting pictures to where I have this big collage of nonsense.
Right.
It's like you found an image that was representative, and ta-da!
Right.
It became a surrogate for 50,000 different ideas that didn't get confettied all over the page.
Yeah. Just, I don't know. And, you know, I feel like I'm being mean. I went to college for this. I mean, like, in brutal college. Like, we would say that it was a poster. That was the thing that we do. They'd tell us what the assignment was. We'd go home, work on it all night, and then you come up and you paste all your ideas on the wall. And then these teachers and the students would come up and just start ripping stuff off. Like, this sucks. This was dumb. What were you thinking? And then it gets down to, like, you know, your best 2 or 3. And then, like, we kind of break down, like, this should do, you should, you know.
You have to harden yourself to, not calling those failures, right? But the iterative process of, okay, if I'm going to get to a final design, I've got to start with something. And I'm not going to start with the final design.
No.
Which means that the thing that I do first is going to not be as good as the thing I do last.
You want to hear a really fun lesson in this? There was this teacher that had given her students, like, it was a logo design project, and she was like, okay, go home and give me 3. And no one's were good the next day. Everybody's logo sucked. And she was like, all right, you're going to do it again. Actually, I think it was a male professor. You're going to give me 50, and you're going to do it over your lunch break. And so what happens is they're scurrying, and what happens is you start, like, getting the idea. You're not overthinking each one, and you start getting the bad ideas out of your head. And everybody came in with, like, 15 to 20 brilliant-looking ones. And it all ties back into comedy. That is the writing process.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Yes.
That is 100% exactly how, when I started, I remember we used to call it what elsing it to death. And it was whatever we were writing, and we'd do these workshops back at Comedy Texas, and whatever, everybody would have their thing. Here's what I'm working on. And then we would just take a piece of paper and every stupid and it would be timed. So you had a cutoff point. It wasn't just nebulously think about this as casually as you want to through the day. It was like, nah, bitch, 20 ideas, 60 seconds, go. And you find out, you get a lot of crap out, right?
Yes.
Like there's these terrible, terrible, terrible things that come erupting from your head.
You get the hacky stuff out of your brain first because it's going to hit you first. Everybody has the bad ideas first. And it's like, let's get those off the table.
Just flick them out there and know that you got to get them out. And then getting into the weird, where your brain hits that, okay, I've saturated the easy stuff. And it starts looking for the second and third level things, and those are the ones that when they hit the paper, just your brain is like, oh,
there
I don't know where that came from. It wasn't me, but it came out of me. But it only comes. You got to. It's like you're like a siphon, right? When you got to get that first. You got to suck it hard. You got to. I don't do the hand motion, Slade. But you got to get like that first little bit going, and then it's like just okay. You've broken the ice. What a. That's a good exercise.
It's a great exercise. I've kept that in my mind my whole life with so many things, especially when I want to start writing new jokes. It's like, because you can do the same thing where you're getting caught on the wording of this one line in a bit, and you're just like, think of 20 different ways I could say that. Yeah.
It's the first draft of anything should not matter at all. It's like the concept that it's even going to be close to usable. Shouldn't even be in your head.
It's the barf on the table, and then you start picking out the pieces. Let's move that here.
Spoken like somebody who's been hungry at a party.
Gross. I don't know why I said barf. Of all the things I could have said.
And you went right to the...
Because that's what it feels like when you start getting these ideas out. You're just like, bleh, 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 bleh. Like, here. Oh, that. Hold on. like throw that off. Like that worked. That's where it is.
Such a muscle you have to train, though.
Yeah.
I think that's the point.
Yeah.
Is that it's just an iterative process and it's got to start somewhere.
And when you see those really, really great comedians on stage that look like they're just so conversational and it just came out and it's like, no, dude.
No comic is just conversationally making it up. It is
not on stage.
Not
no.
up there.
No. Except for maybe, was it not Tom Papa, Todd Glass?
Todd Barry.
Todd Barry, who just
when
did
he
a
does
whole
crowd
tour.
work shows, and Ian Back. There's people who it can be done.
It makes me mad.
It can be done.
It's not me, and it makes me very mad.
So Rock the Cashbar is the podcast. And how frequently does it come out?
Every week, every Monday.
Every Monday? And then you guys choose, you have guests and you have songs.
Yeah, we have this structure. We used to have like no guests, and then it went to a whole bunch of guests. Then it was a guest every other week. Look, I'm throwing out the ideas and I'm seeing what's actually working. And now we have a guest once a month, so 12 guests a year. So I'm trying to be like very choosy now.
Same thing, the iterative process of we've done that with the Whiskey Brothers too, just in figuring out what the audience is really enjoying. And it's sad that you have to think of it this way, but you also have to think about downstream how you can break this up into usable content and how you can. So I love, the era of the Whiskey Brothers where we just came in and bullshitted.
Yeah.
But I also recognize how difficult that is to cut up into usable anything. So
yeah.
All right, well, we're going to try this week, or we're going to try this, or we're going to try rotating guests out. No, we're going to try regular cast member. You try all of these things, and eventually your soul is just like, no, this one feels right.
Yeah.
But if you were like, this is the one, and if this one doesn't work, we're screwed.
No, you can't think like that ever on anything. What we do now, since it's me and Ben, like, 1 week I pick a song, 1 week he picks a song. 1 week it's a Patreon drawing choice. That's our benefit to the Patreon is they get their name in a bucket, and once a month we draw a name, and they get to pick a song.
Very smart.
And then we have a guest. That's the rotation.
I would do...
Yes, okay. You haven't been on the podcast. If
haven't.
you were a guest, what song... And say, well, we tell our guests, like, okay, because once you tell them that, they're like, there's 1,000 songs.
Totally.
And we say, okay, think of one that has lyrics that are fun to break down, or that you have a personal connection to this song and this story. Carly Baker was hilarious. She did Pictures of You by The Cure, and she had this intense memory of the first boy she really fell in love with, this goth boy in high school. And what the song does to her still in her 40s, like when she hears the first, like, of the chimes.
Does she tingle?
She's like, like she said she relates it to the feeling you get right before you go on stage.
Oh, yes.
Where she's like, she's so funny. She's like, I think it browns my chicken. So, Pictures of You, I don't remember what episode with Carly Baker. It's one of the funniest episodes we did about a subject of her being like, oh, it feels really good, though.
Carly's fantastically funny. I'm trying to I was going to ask for some standout episodes. That one, Dale Cheeseman, for certain, with Chili Peppers.
Both Paul's been on it twice, and he chose really ridiculous songs both times because he says he's not.
He doesn't
into
like music.
Yeah, so he chose Rick Springfield, Jesse's Girl, the first time.
That's a punt.
And we're like, "Are you fucking with us?" And then the second time, he had gotten into a conversation on Facebook about Jack and Dianne, and he was about to be on the podcast. I was like, "That's what we're doing.
That's the one.
That's the song we're doing." And that was just fun.
Paul's so funny. When I say he doesn't like music, he's like, I just bartend and I look for music that does not offend people.
And I don't like going to shows because we can't talk to each other. And I'm like, this is the one place where we don't have to debate anything.
I feel like I would come in with a Prince song just because.
We've done only one, so which one?
But something.
Pussy Control.
No. It might be something off Gold Experience, which is arguably my probable favorite album.
As much as I love Prince and have a big poster in my podcast room, I feel like I can say I don't know all the songs.
He's got some, because lyrically he's such a poet. And for a long time, my iPod, which was back in the iPod days, you could if you played all my Prince in a row, it would take you like 5.5 days to listen to it all.
Whoa.
I had a lot. There's a B-side off a greatest hits compilation called Pope, which is it's a fun song.
Okay.
That one will be fun. I would also I could also cheat and do something that has very few lyrics. Like
we just did
Killing in the Name
We just did it. That's the one that came out today. We did not know.
Jinx.
that
It has 3 lyrics.
Tyree Nichols thing happened either while we were recording this. We didn't even mention it. We didn't even know. And I had to drop that episode today and be like, I'm sorry.
Oh, did you do a preamble for it?
No, I mean,
I would have done
fast.
just a preamble. I would have mixed the whole episode and then done this episode was recorded on so-and-so.
I said it when I posted it, like, we didn't know. But also, I was like, I don't even know if it would have been appropriate because those lyrics are so specifically
the
about
Rodney King.
the Klan.
Well, and also that was 91.
It was 91,
It was about the Klan.
92.
It was
in reaction to Rodney King, but the lyric is
some of those who
work forces are the same that burn crosses.
Yeah.
And he's very specific. Not that like you can't have some weird Dave Chappelle sketch black guy who's in the Klan, but that's not what this was. Right. Yeah, and so I was like, maybe it's good that we didn't bring it up.
Yeah, that's again the preamble or some sort of disclaimer just because of the timing, but also it's America, and when would that song not be exactly?
I know.
Current.
And and here's the thing: is that was a Patreon choice song, and I don't think it's one I thought about picking so many times, but then I was like, okay, there's 8 lines in the song.
I was going to say it's very simple. I mean, 16 of them are "fuck you."
Yeah, so fuck you. I won't do it. I think he says it 17 times.
I think it's 16, and I only know 16?
this.
The reason I know this is because I have no musical talent. I'm not a musician. I've never been in a band. However, a couple of local Houston cover bands that I was always friends with in the 2000s. I would be smashed and out at the bars they were playing, and when they did "Killing in the Name of," I would go do the song, and you would sing it 100% karaoke with a live band because it only has like 8 lines, and all I had to do was remember.
There's some talking. That's all you have to do.
It's very simple, and then when you get to the "fuck you" part, I would just count them in my head to make sure that I was, because I don't know how frontmen.
I like how you're doing this on your fingers.
Fuck you! I won't do what you tell.
And you're down to your toes.
And then the 16 but that's what I'm doing in my head while I'm singing this. I'm doing math and counting and trying to. I'm like, how do bands do this?
You gotta feel it, man.
15. Was that 15 or was that 16? The guitarist is just like leaning in, waiting.
Tom Morello, who I am in so much love with. He went to Harvard.
Yes, and as what is his degree in? It's poli-sci or something?
A political science, yeah.
Yeah, he's brilliant.
He's insane.
He's one of the guys that when someone on Twitter or whatever is like, stay in your lane, bro. And he's like, actually, I have the degree. It's sort of my lane.
Yeah,
it's like when people say something to Brian May about science, and they're like, well, he was kind of, he's been in the room.
Or they tell Rage Against the Machine, like, can we just make it about the music? I'm like, who do you think the machine is, you idiot? Yeah.
It's watching new generations discover music that.
Yeah.
I don't know. We're those people now, Dianne.
Yeah, I know. And I'm very ranty in my older age, and I have to stop myself. Like, I see it. I see where the comedians like George Carlin and like Bill Hicks, everybody got like a little like preachy and ranty in your old age, and I'm like, it's happening. I'm sweeping my house, and I am just fucking giving it to somebody, the younger generation.
These kids, we were just these kids.
Astrology is so stupid.
Is there a lot of that's probably a touch point with this new generation too? Because if I think of the Houston comedy scene, right? It was all the Houston comics I knew. Everyone I met was like the most ardent vocal atheist imaginable, like vehemently so, And Rob Mungle being their leader, but all the way down, right. It was almost
except
like
for Andy
Huggins, but Huggins wasn't part of that back room at the Laff Stop. No. I mean that generation.
It was like, and McCrae back then, I still held on to his religion, which I think he lost it. But you think about like Mungle and Hersey leading the way with the Dawkins dog, is it Dawkins?
Yeah, Dawkins.
Yeah. And then me, little old white girl coming in, and I remember Hersey not believing me. He's like, "No, you believe in God."
Brian Hersey, rest in peace.
Yeah.
But now I see a lot of, you mentioned crystals or astrology or whatever a second. The
magical thinking is big right now.
What is?
Hate it. That's why women don't get paid as much as men.
Because of magical thinking?
Because they all are so deep into like birth charts and horoscopes and retrogrades and everything that is a cop-out for taking ownership of your fucking bad personality. And it's a slap in the face to everything that forms our personalities. Our personalities are not formed by the alignment of some stars that died before the Bible and all these like fucking planets. And I'm like, those are elements and rocks and gases in space. You are not paying attention to when you were born, who you were born to, what age your parents were, what birth order you had. Like, two siblings don't have the same parents. There's a whole podcast on that will blow your mind. Your socioeconomic status. Were you poor? Were you in a white neighborhood? Did you have poverty? What trauma did you have growing up? How many times were you molested? Like, all of those things form your personality. Fuck a retrograde, you stupid bitch. Go to therapy and deal with your shit.
I don't know how to shut up because of Mars. You're like, oh no, that's not Mars.
What a cop-out. Own your shit. I hate it.
I wish I could just blame some crystals. I wish I could just...
We all want to blame something else other than our bad choices. Come on. I hate it.
I love how everybody... It's one of my least favorite things about right now, this just general time period, is that, I would say, that lack of accountability, but we have somehow just be you, that phrase... Yes, just be you, but also
figure
apologize.
Out who you are
yeah, figure it out, and then apologize for the bad shit that is you. It doesn't give you a right when someone's like, I had this terrible breakdown the other day, and I said all these things. You're like, that's cool, but you're not apologizing.
It's not an excuse.
You don't get to just do that and walk away. There's still fallout from your actions. I get it. Maybe you are fractured in the head, but you don't get to just hurt other people because of it.
It's something new parents are learning, so... Everyone makes mistakes. Every parent makes horrible mistakes.
Totally.
None of us know what the fuck we're doing with our kids. But, like, my parents, I don't remember one time in my whole life that they apologized for a way they reacted to me. Not once. They were, like, right in what they did. You're a stupid kid, like, whatever. And I'm learning as a parent that there are times I'm just tired. I'm impatient. He's getting on my nerves. I snap. And they said, like, we learned that, like, it's okay. Everybody loses their shit. The recovery is what's so important. Yes. If you pull those kids in and be like, hey, I'm really sorry. I yelled at you earlier and you didn't do anything wrong. Mommy's having a bad day. I'm stressful. And you give them that hug and you say you're sorry. And then it doesn't form a trauma bond in their mind.
It seems so. I guess on the surface it is counterintuitive where you're like, I don't want to expose them to my failures. But also it is important. My dad was never wrong. And I don't just mean in the sense of...
Mine either. And he's dumb. So dumb.
My dad was smart, but he wasn't as smart as he thought he was. That was it was that kind of, I remember a lot, even when we would play, he had a pool table after they divorced in the new house. And he,
Of course he did.
Of course he did. A pool table and all this stuff. And would be up.
No toilet paper, but pool table.
I never beat him because even if I won, it was suddenly, oh no, it was 2 out of 3, or it was 3 out of 5, or it was, he would change.
Toddler shit.
He would change the parameters so that he never lost in the grand scheme of it all. And I was just like, you fucker. I don't have a single memory. Even when I did beat you, you changed the goalposts so that I didn't.
That's what my son does.
I out-sprinted you for 100 yards and you suddenly changed it to a 200-yard race.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that's again, it comes back to the stuff I think I would never do if I was a parent. And it's the hypotheticals.
Yeah. I didn't mean to shit so hard on the young girls who believe in crystals. You know what? I'm going to go back to something I've always said. Believe whatever helps you sleep at night. Believe whatever you want to believe. And I mean this on religions across the board. And it's really hard raising a little autistic kid in where I live, where there's a church on every corner and everyone's religious. And one time at the bus stop, the little girl was running up and she was like, we were late because we were praying. And my son goes, what's praying? And I was like, no! Oh, our mom's coming. Don't say that out loud. So what I'm trying to teach him, I'm starting to teach him about religions, but like all the religions. And I was like, Charlie, everybody believes different things. It comes from what they were grown up with. And I was like, what I want you to do as you grow up is listen to all the good parts of all of their religions and see where they all intersect and have the same message. And that should be your religion. Like, we all want the golden rule. Like, we all want, certain things.
Love one another.
And I'm like, just be a good person. That's your religion. That's all anybody's religion should be, is just be a good person. Yep. But some people aren't good people. They're not wired good, and they need religion. I think it's very important. I don't want to abolish it.
Interesting. That's
yeah.
Where are you on this? Where are you on the scale now, personally? What's your? Have you let me, you don't have to answer it specifically. Have you shifted from the you of 20 years ago?
No.
Same.
They got a lot stronger.
Got stronger?
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
fair.
I don't, and I wouldn't even say I'm spiritual. Like people are like, you're an atheist, you're an agnostic. I don't claim to know there's no God. I claim to know nothing. So I should say agnostic, but it feels like such a ride in the fence, you know?
Well, but I also, on the other end of that spectrum, we have friends who are so equally convinced that there is nothing,
Right.
as much as the crazy people who are completely convinced they know exactly what's there. And I'm always like, you guys are all just screaming with no evidence.
Yeah.
You're all...
It comes down to what feels good in your heart. And this is where people can't get around to my way of thinking is like they say, like, say you just believe when we die, it's a dirt nap. And I don't find that horrifying. I find peace in that because I feel like then do your best when you're alive. Do your best. Be good. Make something. Make a mark. And I'm not going to know if there's nothing. I'm not going to know. The dirt nap is not going to bother me. But also there's people like, well, if all of this is chaotic and aimless, like, you know, there's no point in all this. None of it means anything. And I'm like, none of it means anything. Why do you think that's a bad thing?
It's to some people that's completely debilitating, and to some people it's totally liberating.
It's like the best.
But
to
it's
me.
I equate it to, it's like a breakup, right? It's like the difference between being completely discarded and being completely free is literally just like the angle at which you're looking at it.
And it's a lot of ego. I think a lot of religion comes down to people's ego of like, no, I am important and I must move on. And I'm like, there's like 7 billion. You're not.
It's like 100 million if you go all the way back. Something's getting
yeah,
crowded.
and I'm just like, I don't think I'm important enough to live on. And this idea of seeing dead people that I was with in life, and I'm like, I want to see like 3 of them. Do not make me see my dad. We're done. Like, no.
And what if you have multiple spouses and then they're all up there and now you got to sort through that?
The story has holes in it. It's not good.
I hope it's not reincarnation. I'm afraid I'm going to come back as me, and that just seems...
I will say this, but if I feel like we're starting to wrap up, I'm going to say this. Out of all these things that I don't believe in, like I am like the most peaceful nihilist you've ever met. Do you say nihilist or nihilist?
I say nihilist.
Okay. I will do things that I'm like, Dianne, what are you doing? So I've done it since like high school where I am having like a struggle. Maybe I was going through like a breakup with a boy. And I play this shuffle game. I used to play it on the radio, and now I play it with my own like music, my iTunes. And I will be like, universe, how does so-and-so feel about me right now? And I hit shuffle, and I will believe it with all my heart. Like whatever song comes on, somebody is feeding me these messages.
But these people with their crystals and their planets are losing their minds.
Those idiots, these dumb bitches. But I believe my song because there are some times where it's so dead on.
Are you just Magic 8-balling your Spotify?
Yes.
That's incredible. That's...
And this whole bullshit about like manifesting stuff into your life, let me tell you, we've done it twice successfully, and it's bizarre.
Dianne, we don't have to stop this. We can poke at this before we leave. You mentioned The Secret earlier, and
People don't know how to use it.
I don't know if that was on air or off air. We might, but the concepts of things like The Secret, manifesting, blah blah blah. It is total utter woo-woo bullshit in its, I
think I'm in line with what you're about to say.
In its presentation. And it is because I think the arrogance of trying to capture all of that between the covers is impossible. I think there is something to the in-tuneness.
Keeping the goal in focus.
Yeah, to walking towards a specific thing, having that as a subroutine in your brain, and subconsciously or consciously making every decision you can, being the one that brings you closer to that, you will get there.
Yes.
It is inevitable, and I can say that with confidence.
Me too. Yeah.
But you can't sit in the corner of a room and go, I want a red Lamborghini, and then do nothing.
Don't know how to use it. And lazy people don't know how to use it. They are like, they're making wishes and then sitting in their bed depressed and then on their phone like, I'm not in a good place because of capitalism, or
right, of course,
or they're projecting like why they're not succeeding. I'm like, you haven't left your house in a month. You haven't done anything. That the secret is not going to drop between your crummy bed sheets. You still have to be present and working towards something.
But someone has to, and this, I look back because I revisit my own shit constantly. And there was a stretch in my life where I had that sort of optimistic thinking, right? Like you can make anything, but it wasn't attached to any sort of methodology. I didn't know how to make things real. I didn't know what, I didn't have this mentorship growing. There was no teacher teaching me stuff. There was no parent relationship where I was learning. My mom was in survival mode. My dad was distant. So it was just this, and my stepdad, I remember my stepdad, when I learned to drive a stick, right? My first car was a stick. I bought it with my lawn mowing money.
Nice.
I'd saved up like $1,800. I bought an 83 Honda Accord. It was a stick. It was terrible. And my stepdad, the way he taught me, we drove it back 3 blocks into the neighborhood. He tried for like 4 minutes. I ground the gears, dropped all of that. The car stalls out and he just goes, Jesus Christ, son, and he walks home. And that's like that's how, and I learned to drive the car by, I had to get it home. In a roundabout way, he did teach me. But it wasn't by teaching me. It was by learning. So when I think of my whole life like that, I'm like, there aren't a lot of examples of, I didn't go to college. I didn't have anybody go, here's how you do something from A to B to C and take pride in it. That was just,
you don't learn when someone's doing that for you.
You have to do it.
You have to do it. And you have to be present. Like, you have that vision board or whatever. And so it's kind of always in your peripheral. And then you're going about your daily life. And if you're not like kind of always thinking like goals to get there, something's going to flash in front of you that's going to help you get there. And you're not going to see it because you're complaining that capitalism is stopping you from finding your goal. And you missed it. It was right fucking in front of you.
Whereas if that was at the forefront of your mind, you would have caught that.
Yeah.
And that's
staying present. Saying like, whoa, that'll help me.
Keeping it in focus is so important.
Yeah. And then it's like things just magically drop into place. Like, no, you caught it. You're paying attention.
Yeah, I mean, it magically dropped into place, but I was sort of standing out there with a catcher's mitt and a bucket, just, looking for things falling out of the sky.
I was chasing it down with a stick.
So in a way, yeah, I did catch it.
Yeah.
But they make it sound like you were skipping through a field and this wonderful thing fell into your bucket.
Yeah. And that happens. Luck happens. Let's not discount luck.
Luck happens, but it's not a business model.
It's not. No. And you didn't manifest that luck.
I'm incredibly impressed by the fact that you were doing things and you're maintaining an outlet for your creativity. Because you're very funny. You've done short films, you've done comedy, you've done improv. I've seen you for 20 years making really cool shit, and it's just cool to see something steadily coming out. We should do the podcast. We should do an episode, and maybe I'll show up with Prince's Pope. It's a fun song.
Ooh, I like it.
But there's Face Down, and there's style, and there's so much from that era that came off of Emancipation.
So,
anyway.
I tell people 2 things when they come on my podcast as a guest is like, you bring a song, and then at the end I'm going to ask you what your guilty pleasure song is, something you're embarrassed that you like. Oh. Do you have a guilty pleasure song?
Man, the problem is anything from the 80s, that sort of power ballad. Who said?
I
can
love
tell you who sang
Yacht Rock. Let me tell you.
Yacht Rock, yes, but I mean, there's like even Transformers the movie soundtrack. There was a song, Steve. Okay, I'm gonna tank this. I'm gonna have to look this up. Give me a second. It will be right here. Steve, hang on 1 second. I guarantee you, I will. So Steve, who did this stupid song from Transformers the movie? This was. I will wait my whole.
What
podcast.
year did that come out?
So total hair. So that era of it's seared in my brain, the emotion that comes with songs like that would either be in Transformers, because I could see Optimus Prime. Like there's just it taps into something visceral. That comes from my childhood and my youth and my good memories of good and evil and cartoons from the 80s.
How do you feel about the Mossy Nissan?
Mossy Nissan.
So when Sarah Talamash was dating, I think maybe it was one of her exes. I was going to say Henry, but it wasn't Henry. They had another funny thing they would do. One of her exes, they used to play a game to see who could out Mossy Nissan each other. You would start low, like, Mossy Nissan. And the next one's like, Mossy Nissan moves you. Like, you just go.
That commercial and the do you remember the Budweiser Real American Heroes commercials? That was the lead singer of Survivor who was singing Real American Heroes.
What a
Real
downfall.
American Hero. That guy was who did Eye of the Tiger. That's the singer. That's
He
how
also
far.
did Roy. He did that commercial.
That guy's had a very good post Eye of the
He's
Tiger
having a good time.
career. The podcast is called Rock the Cashbar. It comes out weekly. I'm going to do it. We're going to have fun. Where is everything online? Where's the social?
RockTheCashbarPodcast.com. Rock the Cashbar podcast. It's on everything.
Easy to find. We'll hang out again. Dianne Cupps Gallagher. How do we? Dianne
You can call me
Gallagher.
Cupps.
You were D Cups to me for the rest of my life, but Dianne Gallagher, the host of Rock the Cashbar. Thanks for coming.